Today's episode is a dandy. No, I shit thee not. Ooh, buddy, it's all f***ed up, let me tell you that. It turns out that one of our youth counselors has maybe been having an inappropriate relationship with a minor. What? What makes you think it's inappropriate? He's just 28, she's just 15. What on earth could be f***ing wrong with that? The guy did tell the girl not to tell anyone else. That, my friends, is about as guilty a motherfucker as you could possibly get right there. He's grooming her for whatever. People f*** up. See, I'm pulling out Bible verses today. Yes, by God, I certainly am. They don't want it discussed because they may lose some parishioners and thereby may lose some f***ing money. They know that that 15-year-old that they're talking to is not going to tell their parents. Too many times, we remain silent. We hold our breaths. We don't speak. We wait for someone else to do it for us because we don't want to rock the boat. Part of our jobs as human beings is looking out for and protecting the people who cannot protect themselves. Johnson, former United States Most Wanted Cybercriminal, now good guy, and host of the Brett Johnson Show. Today's episode, I'm going to tell you, today's episode is a dandy. It's going to be a doozy of a day. What's it about? Well, it's about child predators. It's about Mountaintop Church here locally in Birmingham, Alabama, and it's about how they're handling or not handling an inappropriate relationship between a 28-year-old and a 15-year-old. We'll get to that. Before we get to that, we got a couple of things to talk about. I guess what we should mention is, why am I doing this show? Well, the reason I'm doing this show is my youngest stepson. He came to me the other day and said that he had gotten some news about this inappropriate relationship. So he asked me some advice on that, and I told him, I was like, well, you need to call it out. You need to follow up on it, because when someone shares information like that with you, if you remain silent about it, you are complicit. You have a share in the guilt if this child becomes further victimized than she already is. And he took that shit to heart, and he has been stellar. He is. This is my youngest boy. He has been. He's had trouble. Yes, he's had some difficulty in the past about standing up for himself, about finding inherent value, about doing the right damn thing. But I've got to say that over the past year, the young man has been absolutely outstanding. And when I told him what he needed to do and what he should do, he took that shit to heart, and he's been doing it. So on my part, he told me. So if I remain silent about it and don't do anything, I become complicit if anything happens with this young girl, or if anything's happened with any other children that happen to be up at this church. So we're going to talk about that today. Now, before we talk about that, we know that part of the Brett Johnson Show is the Bitch, Moan, and Complain segment. So that's what we're going into right the fuck now. I hate them all. They ain't no f***ing way. You don't want to hear about this bullshit. Bitch, moan, and complain. You are full of poo. All right, so today's Bitch, Moan, and Complain segment. So I don't know if you guys knew this or not, but when I do a Bitch, Moan, and Complain segment, I'll actually go out on the interwebs and I will find some stuff that I would like to bitch, moan, and complain about. And I've got 3 things already loaded up in the chute, ready to go. Now, that being said, sometimes something pops up that I really want to handle. And this is one of those days. And what popped up, I made a comment on my Twitters about Kevin Spacey. So Kevin Spacey, 2017, the dude was canceled. And he was canceled because these individuals came out and they said, hey, He sexually assaulted me. He drugged me. I passed out and I woke up with a sore bunghole, is what they said. So because of that, Kevin Spacey has not worked as an actor since that point. He recently got a part in some sort of horror film that's, I think it's out or it's coming out, but he's not been able to work at all since that point. Now, what's interesting is that he went to trial in the UK. He was found not guilty. He had a civil suit in the United States. That civil suit was thrown out without merit, all right? Also, he was head of the Old Vic Theater at one point. Some people came out and said that he had sexually assaulted them while he was head of that theater. Turns out that an investigation at the theater also came back saying that, hey, there's no merit to anything that's being said. Now, you would think, hey, the dude's been found not guilty. The dude has been, the lawsuits were thrown out, all this other stuff. You would think that, hey, okay, maybe the dude can get his ass back to work. No, absolutely not, because evidently being found not guilty of shit doesn't matter anymore in the United States. And I've got a problem with that. And while we're on this, probably going to get some people that don't like me. Not that I really give a damn. When you're found not guilty of something, when you go through the trial process, by God, that should matter. It should matter. All right. Now we've got, there's another guy that was found not guilty of something many years ago. And he just died this year. His name is O.J. Simpson. All right. Now, I don't really give a damn what you think of O.J. Simpson. I do know that a court of law found him not guilty. And even though that court of law found him not guilty, he was continually shunned. He was punished as often as he could have been by people who said to themselves that, hey, I don't give a shit what the court said. He's guilty. He's guilty. You know what? Something is really wrong with that. Do I think that O.J. Simpson did it? I don't know. I don't know. But I do know this. I know that he was found not guilty. And in this country, when you're found not guilty of something, we have this justice system that says that you're innocent until you're proven guilty. So he was found not guilty, yet he was continually punished until the day that he died. I mean, he had that burglary or that robbery charge in Las Vegas that he was sentenced up 10 years, not because of the robbery, but because the people who sentenced him thought that he was guilty of the Nicole Brown Simpson murders, and they wanted to get his ass on that. This thing with Kevin Spacey, we've got a man here who has not worked since 2017. He has, if you've watched the Piers Morgan interview, absolutely, he admitted to inappropriate touching, to going too far, to quote unquote being a little handsy, but that does not equate to criminal acts. And more than that, he's lost his livelihood. He's done all this stuff that he should not be going through, because the man has been found not guilty. The problem is that we as a society, we like to demonize people. We like to think that we know more than the court system or the justice system. And because of that, we like to say, nope, he got away with it. He got away with it, and by God, he needs to suffer. I don't agree with that. I think that a proper functioning society, that when someone is found not guilty of something, that by God, they should be not guilty, that they should be allowed to resume their lives prior to their lives being interrupted by these court proceedings. But that's not the way our society works. And that's a goddamn shame that it's not. The regular bitch, moan, and complaining stories that I've got lined up, well, there's one about step incest porn being so insanely popular.
Talk about a regular society.
I know. Turns out a regular society likes stuff to talk about, likes their porn being about stepdaughters, evidently. So go figure on that one. Now, the question is why is this bullshit so popular? Why is the taboo? Because that's what it is. That's the titillation about it. It's so taboo that it becomes very popular. And I've got a theory about that. My theory is internet porn as a whole. Little Billy, he gets his cell phone at age 13 or 15, or well, not 15. He gets his cell phone at age 9, 11, or 12. And that little motherfucker accesses all the porns, all the channels, everything else. And he's like a little spider monkey. His mom comes in, the sheets are caked and are crusty and everything. And she's like, God damn, little Billy, what are you doing? Where's the Vaseline, mama? And he's just spreading his seed all over the place. Well, the thing is, and I know this because I had a porn addiction. The thing is that you start with very vanilla porn.
We all got used to seeing lots of really perverted stuff on the internet, so now we can't go back to Playboy.
I know, right?
And before you're through with it, you start looking for more and more bullshit. So you go into maybe the burqa porn. Durka.
Brazilian fart fetish porn? Click.
So you have to find more and more stuff. And my theory is this. My theory is that the pornographic material that's out there right now, we've already seen or become titillated by so much of that shit that's going on that now the only thing that can, get one's jingles off is the taboo stuff, the incest type porn, the pornography today. It's trending toward daddy porn and stepdaughter porn is what it's trending toward. And my thought is that's pretty goddamn bad if you think about it. You're talking about people becoming excited because of incestuous relationships. Now, while that right now is just a fantasy, I can promise you that fantasy, the people who watch it, oftentimes they want to make sure that fantasy becomes a reality. And that becomes a problem because, as we know, today's show is about child predators. So just bear that in mind as we go forward. That is not the only thing I wanted to complain about today. Jefferson Davis, that sumbitch evidently had a birthday the other day, and it's considered a federal holiday. Of course, it's an Alabama state holiday. It's fucking Alabama, where the weather is always hot, humid, and racist. I live in Birmingham, by the way. Birmingham, I shit thee not, Birmingham is cut in half by a railroad track. North of the railroad track, if you pull up a map of demographics for Birmingham, north of the railroad track, the population is 99% African American. South of the railroad track, the population is 98% Caucasian. It's so bad in Birmingham that during the 1960s, there was a U.S. senator that referred to Birmingham as Little Africa. All right, or Little South Africa, because of the way that things are operate in Birmingham. Birmingham was the first city that declared bankruptcy in the United States. It was overshadowed because shortly after that, Detroit declared bankruptcy. The way that Birmingham has handled that bankruptcy and failure to be able to pay their bills is you've got little enclaves in Birmingham. You've got Vestavia Hills, you've got Mountain Brook, you've got Hoover, you've got these areas those areas, they ain't poor and they pay their bills and they have very good school systems and everything else. Outside of those areas, though, ooh, buddy, it's all fucked up. Let me tell you that. Take Mountain Brook, for example. My sister, Denise, she lived here in Birmingham for about a year and a half, and she's a school teacher. She was looking at getting a job in the Mountain Brook area. Mountain Brook is the richest area in Alabama. She came to me and she told me, she's like, hey, I don't know if you knew this or not, but looking at some of the statistics for the Mountain Brook school system, and this was when she was a teacher maybe here 5 years ago, she was telling me that, hey, no one gets reduced lunches in Mountain Brook. And she's like, I have never seen that before in my life. She says it's even worse than that. She said through the entire K through 12 Mountain Brook school system, there are only 3 African Americans. I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, I shit you not, only 3. I was like, you mean 3%? She's like, no, I mean 3. 1, 2, 3, only 3. This is what you see in Alabama. And for Alabama to have Confederate holidays where you're celebrating the president of the Confederacy, it's got a kind of a bad look to it. You know, the only thing that would make that worse is if they had a big old, like, birthday cake with the Southern swastika on it. See what I said there? The Southern swastika, otherwise known as the Confederate flag. We don't see Nazi Germany being celebrated with holidays in Germany. But for some reason, we see in the South, we see a celebration of Confederate soldiers. Now, I am not the guy. I am not for destroying Southern statues or Confederate statues. I don't believe in that, because I believe when you start trying to get rid of that stuff, that you try to hide your history. And if you try to hide your history, you are doomed to repeat the history that you don't understand, don't respect, and don't remember. So I'm not for that. But this idea of celebrating people who were part of the Confederacy and part of that system that wanted slavery, there's something really wrong with that, guys. And we as a society, we can do better than this. I promise you, we can absolutely do better than this. Now, that is not what I really wanted to bitch, moan, and complain about. What I really wanted to talk about is Alex Jones. So the Twitter let Alex Jones's ass back on the Twitter recently, and the dude's already, the dude. I have watched InfoWars a couple of times. I have even read John Ronson's book called Them, where he has he actually hangs out with Alex Jones before Alex Jones became madly insane. Well, he was already madly insane, but before he became madly popular and got his ass canceled and everything else. This book was written back in, 2010, something like that. At that point in time, Alex Jones actually was broadcasting InfoWars out of the nursery where his child was. All right.
2003.
2003. Okay. So yeah, that gives you an idea of this. So back then, Alex Jones was not really popular. He was horribly insane, and the book gives a very good account of Alex Jones in that. Alex Jones was fined $1.5 billion for the Sandy Hook lies. All right. I don't know if I agree with that. And the reason is not that I like Alex Jones. I think he's a fucking idiot. But the reason I don't think I agree with that is, this idea that someone says something and then someone acts upon that, and because the first guy said it, he's held accountable for that. I don't think I really agree with that. I'll give you a couple of examples. Is it video game manufacturers' faults that we have mass shootings? No, by God, it's not. Is it? I'm trying to think of some other examples as well, because that video game stuff.
Death metal music.
Is it Marilyn Manson's fault that you had the Columbine shootings? Because he was absolutely blamed for it. The answer is fucking no, it's not. Just because he writes a song about beautiful people or, dope show or whatever the hell Marilyn Manson is singing about on that specific album does not mean that Marilyn Manson caused the Columbine shooting. What that means is that the Columbine shooters are the ones that are responsible. Now, the Sandy Hook stuff, absolutely fucknut. Alex Jones lied through his fucking teeth. He made a shit ton of money putting out those conspiracy theories about Sandy Hook, everything else. But who in their right goddamn mind gives any credence to Alex Jones and anything that son of a bitch says? Nobody. He's a fucking idiot. If you're believing that dude, I gotta tell you, you're a fucking idiot too. Now, just because some fucking idiot says something, just because he's got a platform, and just because people are listening to it, does that make him responsible? A jury said that did. I don't agree with that. I know he's got an appeal going on. I know that the $1.5 billion that he was, that the judgment came against him, the Sandy Hook families are willing to settle for only $85 million paid out over 10 years. So, and the reason they're willing to settle for that is because I really believe that they're going to lose that judgment on appeal. Now, Alex Jones, last week, he was coming out and he was saying that, hey, the federal authorities are going to shut down InfoWars. It turns out that there was some question about that they were going to actually lock everything up and sell everything in order to try to satisfy the judgment. a judge came out and said, no, by God, we're not going to do that. So that was set aside. The interesting thing is a day later, Alex Jones comes out and says, hey, I'm going to be selling a lot of the InfoWars stuff in order to try to pay off this debt, which is kind of interesting to me because last month, InfoWars as a channel, as a platform, made $3.2 million last month. Of that $3.2 million, the monthly expenditures was $1.9 million. So he ended up profiting on that month $1.3 million, something like that. Yeah, $1.3 million. Now, it seems to me that if the families only want or are willing to settle for $85 million spread out over 10 years for $8.5 million a year, seems to me that some bitch could pay that. All right, he doesn't have to shut down shit. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but just bear this stuff in mind. I talked about Kevin Spacey. I mentioned O.J. Simpson. Also talking about Alex Jones here. The issue for me, we have a justice system in the United States, and that justice system works fairly goddamn well. It does. All right. If you're found not guilty of something, I fully believe that society should move forward with that, should recognize that, hey, the guy was found not guilty. It doesn't matter what I think. A court of law found him not guilty. He should be allowed to resume his life, to not be continually punished, a.k.a. Simpson and Spacey now. Alex Jones, he's got the judgment against him until he wins it on appeal. If he does win it on appeal, I think that he should be paying off or trying to make amends for that. Now, we know he's not been doing that. He's been hiding money. He's been trying to claim bankruptcy. Before the thing even went to court, he was trying to hide money and everything else. Meanwhile, he's buying shit. I think the guy owns like 30 or 40 different Rolexes. I don't own a Rolex. My first few Rolexes, I had to steal. These days, I don't. This thing here, I've got a Tudor on right now. I don't know if I'll ever buy a Rolex because of the lifestyle I used to lead. Okay, I don't think I'll ever buy one. I think I'll stick with the Tudors and Omegas and stuff like that I've got.
What about
right
a
now.
Casio?
And a Casio.
Funny thing, you mentioned a Casio. I've got a Casio MRG that I fell in love with. Now, that MRG, that's the top-of-the-line Casio. I've got an MRG. I've got a Frogman, which is one of their souped-up Casios. I think I've got another one, too, man. I like Casio. I do. I think Casio puts out a damn fine product. That MRG I've got, it's purple, it's gold, it's got some red finishes to it. It's got atomic... It's got the atomic clock on it, so it sets itself by that. It's got... you can set it by radio. There's an app you can download on your phone. You can have it done like that. It's fucking fantastic. Matter of fact, the next show, I'll wear it so I can show it off. Ooh. How's that sound? All right. That being said, let's move along and see what we got from the headlines. I read this thing that Joe Biden, what he's doing is, one of his re-election hopes is making sure that he's able to paint the Trump presidency as nothing short of horrific. So I read that and I was like, was the Trump presidency, was it really that goddamn bad? So I started to look at things because as I'm going through the Biden presidency, really the only thing that sticks in my mind is that it's become normalized for children to have body parts cut off so that they can satisfy their gender virtue signaling parents. That's what I see, and it's kind of interesting because, and we'll talk about that on another show, but the Council of Pediatricians of the United States, they actually came out the other day and said, hey, that bullshit needs to stop. We need to stop with the gender reassignment surgeries on minors.
Especially and the reason, at such a young age.
Especially at such a young age, because, and I make this point too on another Twitter feed, but children, especially males, the male brain does not fully form until the early 20s. So they're not able to make a fully rational decision until that point. So if you know that, and that's scientific, that's a fucking fact. If you know that, why are you allowing a child that's not able to make a fully rational decision? Why are you allowing that child to undergo a surgery as a minor? There's something really wrong with that, and I don't agree with that. I absolutely do not. I understand that some children, they're going to be depressed, everything else, but still it should be waited upon until they're able to make that fully rational decision. That's just my opinion. But that's what I remember about the Biden presidency so far, along with males beating the dog shit out of females in women's sports. That's my two takeaways on the Biden presidency. So what I did is I went and I started to look at, okay, what was better about the Trump presidency instead of the Biden presidency? And I came up with a list of stuff. Oddly enough, there's shit you can Google out there to find out what was better. For example, groceries under Trump, 22.4% cheaper. The average gas price, $2.57 a gallon. Inflation under Trump never exceeded 2.4%. Under Biden, 8%. Under Trump, wage growth exceeded inflation. That is not the case under Mr. Biden. Meth coming across the Mexican border was effectively shut down under Trump. Under Biden, not so fucking much. Trump seeks to hold the NATO countries financially accountable. Meanwhile, Mr. Biden has us on the cusp of World War III. Does anyone want to even talk about the U.S. border and immigration problem? Probably not. Trump supports crypto. Biden puts a 45% tax on crypto. Handling of COVID. Do you even want to talk about that bullshit? I think not. Interest rates far lower under Trump. People had a better chance of achieving home ownership under Trump. Unemployment for women under Trump hit a 70-year low. 7 million Americans were lifted off of food stamps under Trump. Poverty rates for African Americans and Hispanic Americans reached record lows under Trump. Income inequality fell for 2 straight years under Trump. Trump made it easier to prosecute financial crimes. Trump instituted tax cuts which did not benefit him politically. Trump was responsible for rallying the world against 5G China domination. Trump gave billions of dollars to farmers, and it just keeps going more and more and more and more. So the reason I say that is Biden's plan of painting the Trump presidency as highly negative, I'm not quite sure that's going to work. I'm really not. You can argue that the Biden economy is better than Trump's as much as you want to, but the truth of the matter is a majority of Americans feel that Trump is much better at handling the economy than Joe Biden is. All right, on today's main show, we are talking about a child predator here at a local church, or a potential child predator at a local church here. The way this got started. So Brian.
Hello.
Yes, Brian. Brian put out a short about, I was talking about how this preacher tried to hire this hitman to take out his daughter's boyfriend. And I was talking about, usually at churches, the only thing you have to worry about is that one of the church members, one of the hierarchy there is trying to squirt salvation into someone's soul. That's usually what you have to worry about in a church environment. However, this preacher was trying to hire, get a murder for hire going on. Well, what happened was that was Sunday that I was watching that. I don't go to church. I don't. There's a reason that I don't go to church. My youngest, Carson, young stepson of mine, he goes to church every Sunday. He's involved in the youth ministry. He's an outstanding young man. He asks me sometimes if I would like to go to church with him. And I tell him, Carson, I don't want to do that just in case he shows up here. That way, someone's at home. If he shows up here, I'll call you and you can come down and see him. And Carson usually gives me his face like, and at the same time, I tell him, hey, if he shows up at church, let me know. Have you got my number on speed dial? And every Sunday he's like, yes, Brett, I have your number on speed dial. And I'm like, if he shows up, call me. I'll shoot my ass up there. But I'm willing to bet that he doesn't show up because, always a bridesmaid, never a bride. He keeps saying he's going to show up. He's not fucking shown up yet. Carson heard me listening to that short that Brian put out. And, he's at the top of the stairs and he's standing there a second. He's like, funny, you should say that. And I was like, say what? He's like, about the squirting salvation stuff. And I was like, okay, what's going on? So he had just gotten back from the morning service And he sits down on the steps, and I'm on the sofa, and he starts talking to me. He's like, look, he said, I'm not sure what to do here. I was like, okay, what's going on, dude? He's like, well, we were talking today, and some of the kids were talking, and it turns out that one of our youth counselors has maybe been having an inappropriate relationship with a minor. Well, that caused my ears to perk right the fuck up. Do tell, young man, what's going on? Turns out that this 28-year-old drummer, it's evidently always one of the fucking musicians. Not youth minister, but youth choir or some bullshit like that. It's always them that wants to diddle some child at church. At least that's what it seems like. So he says, hey, this drummer, Josh, at the church, he has been texting through Instagram a 15-year-old, and Carson told me the girl's name, been texting this girl for a while, and, it seems like it's probably inappropriate. And I was like, what makes you think it's inappropriate? He's just 28. She's just 15. What on earth could be fucking wrong with that? So he's like, well, I'm not sure they were talking about anything. And so I walked him through it. And I want to do that with you guys today. When you're dealing with child predators, CP people, when you're dealing with these individuals, it's not like the text that they're having with these children are initially sexual in nature. You have this thing called grooming. It becomes very important, if someone were to, if an adult were to simply text a minor and say, I want to do this to you, that minor, more than likely, is going to go to their parents, to some figure of authority, and let them know about it. That is not successful from a predator point of view. What you have to do is you have to groom the minor. You have to establish a relationship. You have to get that minor to trust you. All right, that's what you do. And the way you tend to do that is you get them on some sort of messaging service that no one else is paying attention to, that no one else has access to, like Instagram, like Snapchat, some bullshit like that. And you have a conversation. You start just developing trust, layering that relationship. How are you doing today? How's everything working out? I was thinking about you this morning. Just wanted to say hello. That's the way this bullshit starts. That's the grooming routine. You establish trust. You develop a relationship.
It's a lot like pig butchering.
Like pig butchering, a lot like that, except it's in a church environment with minors. So I told Carson, I was walking him through this, and I was like, and the big thing is you want to keep it secret. So Carson gets quiet, and he's like, oh. And I was like, what do you mean, oh? And he's like, well, the guy did tell the girl not to tell anyone else. That, you talk about a red flag from hell. You talk about an indicator of guilt. That, my friends, is about as guilty a motherfucker as you could possibly get right there. Don't tell anybody that you and I are talking, because I know it's wrong, and anybody that you tell is going to know it's wrong too. So I pointed that out to Carson. He's like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So he was like, what do I need to do? And I told him, and I'm going to tell everyone here the same thing. Part of our jobs as human beings is looking out for and protecting the people who cannot protect themselves. That is absolutely one of our jobs as a human being, as a proper human being. And I told Carson this, and I was like, understand now that you have been told this, if you don't do anything about it, you become complicit. You have a degree of guilt on you if this girl gets further victimized than she already has been. And he's like, what do I need to do? I was like, well, you need to start talking. You need to tell somebody today, right now, today. Do I just tell the youth minister? And I was like, that's where you start. And I was like, if you're not satisfied with that, you bump it right on up the fucking chain. As I said at the beginning of the show, my youngest, he has, growing up, he had some difficulties. He was hard-headed. You couldn't tell him anything. The only way that he would learn is, through punishment. You'd take away bullshit, ground his ass, things like that. And he was a very slow learner at that point. But over the past year, maybe 2 years, he has really started to come into his own. He's starting to become a really good person, and more than that, a good man. And I have a great deal of respect for him. So he goes and he has a talk with the youth minister. Another Josh. This one's name over at Mountaintop Church. His name is Josh Powers. He has a talk with Josh Powers. He pulls him off to the side. And he says, hey, this is what's going on. Now, here's what's important. If you're told that there's an inappropriate relationship going on between a church member, a member of authority in the church, and a minor, how should you handle that? Is the question. The way that this Josh handled it is he told Carson, well, it's probably not that big of a deal. You know, can we even believe the girl? Because, you know, she's not believable sometimes. And she texts a lot of people. And, you know, I know the guy, and the guy's really good. You know, I'll talk to him. It'll be all right. Didn't really convey a high degree of confidence to my youngest. So my youngest then went and emailed the pastor of the church, simply saying, hey, you know, this is what's going on. I mentioned it to the youth minister, Josh. Josh is, I don't feel confident that he's going to do anything about it. He's questioned her reliability. He's blamed her to a degree, blah, 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 blah. And they are handling it. Yesterday, as far as I know, they had a meeting with the girl's parents. I reached out to the church today for a comment. I have not heard back from them yet. Now, what I wanted to talk about, before we move into a bunch of statistics, here's what I need you guys to remember. No, I don't go to church. Does that mean that I'm not versed in the Bible? No, it does not. I'm actually fairly well read in the Bible. Just because I question some of it doesn't mean that I don't know it. You've got the Catholic Church. And everyone knows, or everyone says, you know, the Catholic Church, by God, they like to diddle little boys. Lord knows there's been a lot of news about that. So you have Catholicism. Then you've got the offshoot of Catholicism, Protestantism. And that begins with Martin Luther. Martin Luther nailed the 95 little notes, the theses, on the door of the church, wherever the fucking country was that he nailed it in. But the takeaway on that. So the reason that Protestantism became so popular is if you were Catholic, you were absolutely at the behest of the Catholic priest, of the Pope, of the Vatican. All right. And they wanted all your fucking money. Not only did they want your money when you were alive, but oftentimes, once someone died, if the family had money, the priest would come up to them and say, hey, you know, your buddy there, your family member, they're in purgatory. They're in purgatory. They ain't going to be in purgatory forever. They're probably going to go straight from purgatory right to hell. That's where they're going to go because they were not good people. But I tell you what we were able to do. We can pray them. That's right. I can pray them out of purgatory, out of hell for you for a very nominal fee. That was the game that the Catholic Church played. They were all about money. And because of the kings were believers in Christ. They had no other avenue except to bow down to the Catholic Church, give away land, give away money, things like that. And the Catholic Church became extremely wealthy during that time until this gentleman named Martin Luther comes around. And Martin Luther had a couple of big ideas. His first big idea was, hey, God doesn't need your fucking money. You don't have to pay people off to go to heaven. You can keep your money and your lands and still be Christian. And that sent quite the message to all the kings, because now they had a different avenue, a different option where they could keep their wealth and still be considered Christian. And that's one of the reasons that Protestantism spread like wildfire after Martin Luther nailed those things to the church door. All right. The other big thing that Martin Luther did was he said, hey, this idea that only certain people can be preachers, can speak at the pulpit, that's incorrect. Everyone is equal, anyone, and everyone should be able to preach. That also caused Protestantism to spread like wildfire, because now people were like, hey, I don't have to rely on a priest. Anyone can be a preacher. So the reason I mentioned that last part actually feeds into, both those parts feed into Acts 10:34. See, I'm pulling out Bible verses today. Yes, by God, I certainly am. So Acts 10:34, Peter is talking about how God has no respect of persons. What? Yeah, God has no respect of persons. Everyone's equal as far as God is considered. God doesn't like one person more than another. God doesn't show favoritism. And the Bible is very big about pointing that out. Acts 10:34 points it out. King James Version of the Bible says, God is no respecter of persons. That's Acts 10:34. John 10:16, God is no respecter of persons. 1 Peter 2:17, show proper respect to everyone, love the family of believers, fear God, blah, 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 blah. Proverbs 28:21, to have respect of persons is not good. For a piece of bread, man will transgress. Colossians 3:25, but he that doeth wrong shall receive for the wrong which he hath done. For there is no respect of persons. The reason there is no respect of people, of a specific person, is because, hey, people fuck up. People are influenced. People have desires. People have cognitive dissonance. People do not follow by the word, the infallible word of God. So because of that, we do not respect persons. We do not. All right. I say that because at a church, oftentimes we have a hierarchy. Even a church that's based on Protestantism, which, if it's not Catholic-based, it's automatically Protestant-based, all right? Which means anyone can be a preacher. You can keep your fucking money, all right? That's what that actually means. But at these same churches, we have a hierarchy. We have a set of deacons. We have the preacher. We have the ministers, the youth, the counselors, things like that. And those people, for some reason, they demand more respect than the other churchgoers. Martin Luther was adamant that was not the case. Not only was Martin Luther adamant that that's not the case, but the Bible itself is adamant that that is not the case. There is no respect of persons. I say that because too often in churches, when you have some sort of sexual misconduct, that shit is swept under the rug. It's not talked about. It's not shared with the other parishioners because the people who are in authority evidently know better than anyone else. The truth of the matter is that they don't want that blemish out there. They don't want it discussed because they may lose some parishioners and thereby may lose some fucking money. That's the truth of the matter. Let's talk about some of these statistics for a second. Qualitativecriminology.com, the name of the article is Child Sex Abusers in Protestant Christian Churches. All right, and the paragraph that I'm going to read through is kind of interesting. It says, some estimates exist on the total instances of sexual abuse within Protestant Christian churches. One estimate comes from 3 of the largest faith-based insurance companies that insure over 160,000 churches. These 3 faith-based insurance companies reported 7,095 insurance claims of sexual abuse by clerical members, church employees, congregation members, or others from 1987 through 2007. These reports indicate an average of 260 claims of sexual abuse per year. In addition, a separate study in 2018 published one of the first empirical studies of sexual abuse in the United States within Protestant Christian settings that examined news articles reporting on arrest involving sexual abuse, finding 326 total cases reported from 1999 through 2014. More recently, the Houston Chronicle published a series uncovering sexual abuse. They identified 380 sexual abusers and 700 alleged victims over 20 years. So it's very common. That's just one statistic. Here's another set of statistics that comes from notinourchurch.com. More than 3% of women who had attended a congregation in the past month reported that they had been the object of clerical sexual misconduct at some time during their adult lives. 92% of those sexual advances had been made in secret, not in open dating relationships, and 67% of the offenders were married. to someone else at the time of the sexual advance. Here's another statistic. In the average American congregation of 400 persons, with women representing on average 60% of the congregation, there are an average of 7 women who have experienced sexual misconduct by the clergy. Another statistic, of the entire sample, 8% report having known about sexual misconduct occurring at a congregation they have attended. Therefore, in the average American congregation of 400 congregants, there are on average 32 people who have experienced clergy sexual misconduct in a community of faith. Baylor University as well. Here's some nice, and I'm sorry about throwing out all these statistics, but I want to drive home this fucking point. 51% of pastors say that internet pornography is a possible temptation for them. 20% of the monthly calls to focus on the family's pastoral division are because of sexual misconduct and pornography. More than 30% of pastors are functionally addicted to internet pornography. More than 15% of pastors engage in sexual behavior that they consider inappropriate. Let me repeat that for you. More than 15% of pastors engage in sexual behavior that they consider inappropriate. 10 to 14% of pastors have had sexual contact with someone other than their spouse while they have been a minister. Yes, they have been squirting salvation into other people's souls. That's just some of these statistics. And these things keep going on. I mean, this is the number here is absolutely crazy. And this is from manlystewart.com. Available statistics state that its global prevalence rate is around 18% for girls, 7.6% for boys. One study conducted in Germany found that 4.4% of overall clergy had been accused of sexual abuse of minors. The victims were predominantly male in Germany, 62.8%, and children under the age of 14, 67%. In 80% of cases, the sexual abuse involved bodily contact. The study revealed that 38% of women were molested before turning 18 years of age. Same study found that 16% of boys are molested before they turn 18 years old. It was discovered that only 5% of child sexual abuse had been reported to law enforcement. Only 5% gets reported to law enforcement. The point that I'm trying to make is that CP, child predators, they are a problem. Now, I have been to prison. I served 7.5 years total, a little bit over 7.5 years. The first real prison that I went to was Big Spring. It's out in West Texas Federal Prison. The population of Big Spring, we had about 2,300 people on the compound. 22% were child predators. They were pedophiles, pederast, whatever you want to call them, all right? They are frowned upon in a prison environment. The week before I got there, so what you find in a prison setting, guards don't run prisons. Inmates run prisons. Specifically, the higher classification of security that you go up, gangs run prisons, all right? So at this specific prison, the compound was ran by the Paisa gang, Hispanics, all right? Now, we had an Aryan population there of Aryan Brotherhood, Aryan Nation, dirty white boys, all these other things. We had that population there. Now, understand again, 22% of the population were CPs. The white guys did not like that. So they got it in their head that they wanted the pedophiles off the compound. And the way they did that, they went to the Paisas and they said, can you guys beat the shit out of every single pedo that's here? We can do this. We just need a list of the pedophiles. Where are you going to get a list? Well, it turns out where you get a list, you get a list from the guards. The guards, they don't like pedophiles either. So the guards gave all the Aryans a list of every single pedophile that was on the compound. Now, what happens is 4 o'clock every single day in the federal prison system, you have a stand-up count. Everyone stands the fuck up 2 guards come around and they do a hand count of every single inmate. After that, they lock down the compound. Then they come out and do mail call, and then you go to chow, to dinner right after that. So that specific day, a week before I get there, they do 4 o'clock count. After they do 4 o'clock count, everything's shut down. And then the Pisas, you're issued a master lock, just a padlock to go on your locker. That padlock, you can put that in a sock, or you can tie it onto a belt and make a makeshift mace out of it. And that becomes your weapon of choice when you're in prison. So what happens is, after 4 o'clock count, Pisas, they've got their list of pedophiles, put a stocking over top of their head, they get their makeshift lock mace, and they go around with their list to every bunk that's got a pedophile on it, and they ask the guy, "What are you in here for?" And the guy tells them some lie. And as soon as the guy tells them a lie, they take their lock and they start beating the ever-loving dog shit out of the pedophile. Turns out that the plan the Aryans had of getting all the pedos off the compound, that did not work. See, they said to themselves, if we beat the shit out of them, the guards will send them over to, segregation, and then they will transfer them out, and we won't have any CPs on the compound. Didn't work out that way. What actually happened was the guards locked all the Aryans up and transferred their asses out, and all the pedos stayed on the compound. So when I got there, there was a 22% population of CPs on the compound. When you're there with one of these predators, they're shunned, as they should be. They're not allowed in the TV room. The other inmates extort them. The chances of you getting beaten up, highly, highly probable at that point in time. And that's the way things tend to work in a prison environment. The reason I say that is I got to spend a lot of time with these people. I got to have several conversations with these people because one of my jobs was to approach any white guy that potentially was one of these people and have a conversation. Hey, you need to let me know what the fuck's going on, or you're going to get fucking killed here. What do you want to do? So that was my job. And I interacted with dozens, if not hundreds of these individuals. And I can tell you in no uncertain terms, I never met one that was sorry for his crimes, that had the least bit of contrition, that was remorseful at all for victimizing minors. Ever. Typically, what they would say was, we loved each other. And my response would be, dude, you're in your fucking 40s. She's 12. She doesn't know what that is. And they didn't understand. They truly didn't. They didn't understand that. And this was very common, very common. We had one guy, his name was John. We had one guy that would go through magazines and cut out pictures of the youngest kids that he could find. And, whereas most inmates would put pictures of women inside of their locker, he had pictures of children inside of his locker until we found out about it. Then he had to leave the compound. That or he was going to fucking die. But that's very common. I got to, and I want you guys to understand that this is something that you can't fix. They are sexually titillated by minors. You're not going to fix that, okay? So I say that because now it appears at this church that we've got this drummer guy that is talking to at least one minor and telling her not to tell anyone. The response from the church hierarchy has been, well, first of all, the youth minister, Josh Powers, he blamed the girl. So he did some victim shaming. He also questioned her truthfulness, and at the same time tried to minimize the actions of the drummer, the 28-year-old drummer that's talking to a 15-year-old. I've said it before. I'll say it again. All right? I don't care. I do not fucking care who that girl is. In this context, I don't care that she may be talking to people reaching out to adults. Maybe she's promiscuous, whatever this other Josh was trying to say. I don't care, all right, because she is a minor. She does not have the ability to be completely rational. She doesn't understand these things. She is being preyed upon by a 28-year-old who absolutely understands the way this shit works. He's grooming her for whatever. When you tell somebody, don't tell anyone else, that is absolutely an indication of grooming that child. And that's exactly what this guy is doing. And at the same time, you've got a youth minister out there that's not taking it seriously. Carson went above his head, went to the pastor. The pastor thanked him. The pastor called the youth minister in. The youth minister got upset with my youngest. You shouldn't have went above my head. And I got to tell you, my boy, he did the right thing. He told him in no uncertain terms, I was not confident that you were going to do the right damn thing. So yes, I went above your head. Well, that did not win him any, brownie points with youth minister. It won him all kinds of brownie points with me. And I think that it will win him all kinds of brownie points with the parents of children up there that may be worried that, hey, who else has this guy contacted? Because we don't know yet, do we? No, we don't. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. I called the church this morning, got the secretary on the line, told her, I was like, hey, my name is Brett Johnson. I'm doing a story about a potential inappropriate relationship up there. You guys have got a 28-year-old drummer by the name of Josh, and I said the last name. I said he has been texting through Instagram a 15-year-old minor, telling her not to tell anybody. So I would just like to talk to somebody up there to get an idea of what you guys are doing about that. And she's like, well, who would you want to talk to? And I said, I don't know who the hell would I want to talk to. I don't think she appreciated me saying hell, but that's what I've said. I was like, who the hell do I need to talk to? And she's like, well, I don't know. And I was like, well, you should tell me who I need to talk to. She's like, well, you probably want to talk to the youth minister. And I was like, so you want me to talk to the youth minister, the same guy that I'm questioning about, blaming the victim, telling that, she's not very truthful, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, yeah, that's probably who you want to talk to. I was like, all right, that's who I want to talk to. Let me tell you what the proper reaction should be. All right. If you have news like this, if you're aware of some inappropriate behavior in a church type environment, knowing the history of churches and knowing the way that they like to hide stuff, like to transfer people out, like to not share things within the ministry or to parishioners and things like that. If you're aware of that history, and she absolutely fucking is, if you're aware of that, the proper response at that point is, hold on. I'm going to put you in contact. I'm going to reach out right now to the pastor, see if I can get him up with you. We'll handle it from there. So you want to talk to the director. You want to talk to the pastor himself. This woman did not do that. This woman was like, we'll make sure the youth minister talks to you. Well, he's not going to talk to me because he knows what kind of son of a bitch that I am. The proper response from this Josh Powers, the youth minister, when he was told about this, should have been not to blame the victim. Should have been, hey, let's find out what's going on right now. Instead, he chose to do all that in secret, not include Carson in it or anything else, the guy who was actually on point doing the right goddamn thing. If you're not part of the solution, you are part of the problem. That's the truth of the matter. If you find out something about people being victimized, a crime being committed, a child potentially being groomed, and you are not voicing that, telling other people, making those people accountable for what's going on, you are complicit in that activity. You absolutely are. I do the Brett Johnson Show because I try every single day to be a better person than I was the day before. And I try every single day to try to balance that scale of when I was a criminal victimizing other people. I know what it's like to victimize people. I know what it's like to have people who know that wrongdoing is happening and those people remain silent. because they don't want to cause a ruckus, because they don't want to be disliked, because they don't want to lose a friendship. I know what that's like, and I know that there is power in silence for the predators. I know that. They rely on that silence. They know 5% of all sexual assaults. That's what's actually reported. They know that 95% are not going to report. They know that that 15-year-old that they're talking to is not going to tell their parents. That they're going, yeah, they may tell their girlfriends, but they're not going to tell their parents. They're not going to complain. They're going to keep things quiet. They also know that the clergy, the administration, they don't want that shit to get out, because that means a decrease in parishioners and in the money that's coming in. That's what they know. I ask one thing. I ask, can we not be better than we have been? Can we not start to call out the wrongdoing that's going on? Can we not start to help our fellow man? Can we not start to look out for those people who cannot protect themselves? That is not a huge ask. It's not. But you know what it is? It's something that requires action. It's something that requires you standing up, speaking out, and doing the right damn thing. That's what it requires. And that is very difficult sometimes. I talked to my youngest for probably 2 hours on this subject. I know that this is hard for you to do. I know that you've developed relationships and friendships up there, and that you like this guy and everything else, but I need you to understand that a church environment, there is, if you really are serious about doing church and not just playing at church, you have to understand that the Bible does not respect persons. That's why I started talking about that. All right, it does not respect persons. Paul was adamant about that. We have no respect of persons. Absolutely no respect of persons. And the reason why, people screw up. And if you have respect of persons, calling those people out becomes very, very difficult, because, hey, they're my friend. I like them. I don't want to upset them. I don't want to rock the boat. I'll just be quiet. Somebody else will do the right damn thing. No, they won't. They won't. If you know that wrongdoing is happening, do not rely on somebody else to do it for you. You need to be the one that speaks up and speaks out and does something about it. Because if you don't, that 15-year-old girl, her being victimized, by God, you are partially guilty for that. You are responsible for that. And that should not stand. So what am I going to talk about? Art of accountability. How about we just feed right on to what we've been talking about? This idea of being personally responsible, personally accountable, of speaking up, speaking out when you see something that's wrong. Because too many times we remain silent. We hold our breaths. We don't speak. We wait for someone else to do it for us because we don't want to rock the boat. If you, and in the United States, we got a whole shit ton of people that claim that they are Christian, that have those Christian values. If you really have those Christian values, if you want to be Christ-like, guess who didn't hold his tongue? Guess who didn't not speak up? Jesus. I remember him going into that church, that synagogue, whatever you want to call it, and turning over the tables because, hey, you guys are really fucking up in here. I remember him pissing off everybody in the world because he did the right thing every single day. He called out the wrongdoing. If you truly think that you are that you want to be Christ-like, that you want to be that Christian, let's not play at it. Let's go ahead and call things out as the man himself did when he was on here before they nailed him to that tree. He believed in his stuff so much, that he was willing to get nailed up to a cross and die for those convictions, for those beliefs that he had. If you are not like that, Paul was the exact same way. The apostles were the exact same way, with the exception of Peter, because Jesus knew that man was fallible. But guess what? Paul all these other guys, even Peter after that, they lived and died by those beliefs and convictions. If you're not willing to do the same, to stand up for what you believe in, to stand up and speak out and protect those who cannot protect themselves, something is wrong. So the art of accountability today: speak up, speak out, say something, do something, protect those who cannot protect themselves. My name is Brett Johnson. We're going to close things out. How are we going to close it out? I started saying do the right thing months ago, just kind of as a tag, kind of reminding myself of the importance of doing the right thing. I mean, it's kind of a tautology to say that, but it's simple, but it's very powerful at the same time. All right. We as human beings, we know the difference between right and wrong. We know when we're helping someone versus not helping someone, when we're being a benefit to our fellow human being or not being a benefit. We know that, all right? So when I say do the right thing, that should send a message. It should hit home enough to know, so that people out here listening, self-included, when we're not doing the right thing. And I'm not the guy. I don't do everything right every day. I don't. I fuck up a lot. I do. And I know other people out there fuck up a lot too. But if we can just keep that idea in our mind of, hey, do better than we've done, do the right thing, help, not hurt, speak out for those who cannot or will not speak out for themselves. If we can keep that in our minds, I promise you that the world overall will start to be a better place at the end of the day. My name is Brett Johnson. If you guys don't mind, hit the subscribe button, okay? Sometimes I put out a good show, sometimes I don't, but by God, I try every single time I'm recording. I try to call out the things that need to be called out and to, in my own way, make things better than they have been. And I would urge you guys to do the exact same thing. So if you don't mind, subscribe to the show. Let me know what you like. Let me know what you don't like. We'll take it from there. All right. We're going to close it out. I want to thank you guys for taking the time to listen. I truly do appreciate that. Stay safe out there. Stay secure. Stay vigilant. If you see something, like I said, speak up, speak out, do something. All right. I'm Brett Johnson. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.